If one night you wander along the northern roads of Chiang Mai and someone calls your name from behind the old cemetery wall, do not turn back, for those who have turned never made it home again. That was the first line spoken by an old monk I met near Wat Suan Dok, a place where the earth is softer than anywhere else in the city. They said the ground there remembers the dead. It exhales with the scent of lotus and decay. The story of Mae Chariya began on such a night, when the rain fell upon the roofs of teakwood houses and thunder rolled through the Ping River Valley like a mournful drum. Locals whispered that a woman had gone mad near the northern cemetery, a mother who lost her only son and refused to accept his death. Her name was Mae Chariya, and people in the old quarter spoke it softly, as if it might call something forth. The cemetery itself is hidden behind a curtain of bamboo and frangipani trees. Few outsiders know its real name. The locals call it Wat Mai Liang's Forgotten Yard. No monks have prayed there in decades. No one tends the graves. But on some nights, flowers appear upon the oldest tombs, lotus blooms that should not be there, because they come from the river, and the river is miles away. It was said that Mae Chariya's son, little Thanakorn, drowned one summer in that very river. They found his shoes on the bank, his shirt tangled in reeds, but never his body. The authorities said the current must have carried him away. The villagers said otherwise. They said he was taken. A year after his disappearance, Mae Chariya still walked to the river every evening, calling his name, leaving bowls of sweet rice for the spirit that might bring him home. Her hair turned gray too soon. Her eyes began to lose their focus. Then one day she came to the market with something strange in her hands. A lotus flower, shriveled and dark, its petals the color of old blood. She said she found it at the cemetery gate. It was, she claimed, a sign that her boy was waiting, not beyond life, but beneath it. A journalist from the Chiang Mai Chronicle once wrote about her, a short column dated August 17, 1979. He called her the woman who talks to graves. No one read it twice. Those who did, they said, began to hear whispers in the night, the sound of a child calling, "Mae, Mae, it's me." There is an old northern legend, older than the temples, about a forbidden ritual called Chub Sop, the kiss of the dead. It was said that if one kissed the lips of a corpse before the final dawn, one could glimpse the memories trapped inside that lifeless vessel, see what the dead had seen, hear what they had heard. But there was a warning, always spoken softly. Never kiss the dead you love, because love, unlike death, does not let go. Mae Chariya found the ritual in a torn manuscript left at the foot of a ruined stupa. Some say she dreamt it. Others believe it was given to her by a monk who no longer lived. She spent weeks preparing for it, collecting incense made from river mud, lighting candles carved from cow fat, and most of all, searching for a body that could bridge the two worlds. In Chiang Mai, that was not impossible. The old cemetery sometimes received the forgotten, those who died without names, without prayers. At midnight, she entered that place with the lotus in her hand and a whisper on her lips. "Show me where you are, my son." People living nearby later reported strange lights among the graves. They said the air turned thick and the dogs would not bark. One man, a taxi driver who took a shortcut through the old quarter that night, claimed he saw a woman kneeling by a coffin newly unearthed. She was humming a lullaby in the northern dialect, the same lullaby mothers sing when putting their children to sleep. Only her voice did not sound human. It trembled as though another voice hid beneath it, a smaller, younger one. He swore he saw her lean forward and press her lips against the pale mouth of the dead. Then she fell still. He did not stay to watch what came after. The next morning, when the monks from Wat Suan Dok went to collect alms, they found Mae Chariya lying beside the open grave. Her body was cold, but she was breathing. On her lips rested the wilted lotus, and inside her mouth they found a single strand of hair, not hers but that of a child. She was taken home, but she never spoke again. Or rather, she spoke, but not in her own voice. Neighbors said she began to call out in a boy's tone, laughing softly, asking for rice, asking for his toy boat. At night her voice changed. It grew hollow, distant, as though it came from beneath the floorboards. And when the full moon shone, she would sit by the window, rocking back and forth, whispering to the dark, "May here, come home, my son." By then, everyone in the quarter knew. The ritual had worked, but it had not shown her what she wanted to see. It had brought something else instead. Something that wore her son's voice like a mask. No one dared enter her house after dusk. Yet sometimes on nights heavy with mist, you could still hear two voices from within. A mother's sob and a child's giggle, overlapping, echoing, until it was no longer clear which one belonged to the living. And so the warning stands. If you walk near that cemetery after midnight and a small voice calls your name, do not answer. For in Chiang Mai, the dead do not always stay beneath the earth. Sometimes, they speak through those who love them too much to let go. No one in the village could explain what truly happened that night. But when dawn came and the mist lifted from the cemetery, something about the air had changed. It smelled of river water, cold, murky, as if the ping itself had exhaled into the graves. The monks whispered that the woman had performed the chub sop, a rite so ancient that even their oldest scriptures dared not write its full chant. It belonged to the forgotten gods, the ones who linger in the thresholds between mourning and madness. It was said that the ritual could open the gate of remembrance, where memory became the currency of the dead. But to open it, one must give something in return. A breath, a kiss, a voice. Mae Chariya had given all three. When she awoke, she did not scream nor weep. She simply turned her face toward the ceiling and whispered something no one could understand. Her neighbor, an old woman named Noi, swore that the words were not Thai, not Burmese, not any tongue she had ever heard. But it sounded like a child calling his mother from a place far deeper than the grave. For days, Mae Chariya did not leave her bed. She ate little, slept less, and when she spoke, her lips moved in silence first, as though echoing words only she could hear. One evening, Noi heard her laugh, softly, tenderly, a sound so strange it froze her in place. It was not the laugh of a grieving mother. It was higher, lighter, like the giggle of a boy who had found his toy again. The villagers began to notice other things. The candles in the shrine outside her house never seemed to burn out. The scent of lotus filled the air, even when none were near. Children passing by swore they saw another figure through the window, a small shadow moving beside hers, too short to be her own. The elders grew restless. In Chiang Mai, stories like this do not stay still. They crawl through alleys, slip into tea houses, and settle like dust in people's tongues. The story of the woman who kissed the dead became the village's unspoken curse. Farmers refused to walk near her gate. The monks from Wat Suan Dok stopped visiting altogether. But one night, the abbot himself went to see her. A man named Fra Damanan, who believed compassion could still reach the damned. He found her sitting before a small altar, a wooden table covered in dried lotus petals, each one blackened and brittle. In her hands she held a mirror, and she was whispering softly to it, as if the reflection might speak back. When he greeted her, she turned, slowly, like something that had forgotten how to move. Her eyes were unfocused, but when she spoke, the voice that came was not her own. "Hey, John," it said in the trembling tone of a little boy. "It's cold here." The abbot froze. He had heard of possession before, but this was different. It wasn't madness. It was grief wearing a new skin. He recited the ancient verses of cleansing, and the woman laughed softly, not mocking, not cruel, but the laugh of a child who finds adults foolish. Then she said, "Mother kissed me. Now I can see through her eyes." Fra Dominan fled that house before dawn. He never spoke of it again. But in his final days, he left a note among his sermons, written in trembling ink. "Beware the lotus with a dead man's breath. It drinks the sorrow of the living." No one knew what he meant. But weeks later, Mae Chariya vanished from her home. The door was open, the incense still burning, the mirror lying face down on the floor. Only her sandals remained by the threshold, and a faint trail of water leading toward the old cemetery. By then, the season of rain had come again. The Ping River swelled, and the graves along its edge began to crumble. Children who played near the shore found bones in the mud, their edges smooth as if kissed by time itself. One of the boys, the son of a fisherman, found something else, a single wilted lotus bloom, its stem wrapped around a lock of gray hair. He took it home, and that night, his mother heard him talking in his sleep. He was asking someone to come home, his tone so tender it made her weep, until she realized he was using another name. "Mae Chariya," he whispered, "where are you?" Rumors spread that she had gone to the cemetery to finish what she began. A fruit seller claimed to have seen her walking under the rain, dressed in white, her feet bare, her hands carrying a single bowl of water. He said she was smiling, murmuring something that sounded like a lullaby. Behind her, the shadows seemed to move, not as reflections, but as companions. They said she returned to the grave she had kissed, where the earth still bore the mark of her ritual. There she lay down beside it, and when lightning struck, the villagers saw two figures rise instead of one. A woman and a child, their faces pale as moonlight, their eyes closed, their lips still touching. Since that night, the northern winds carry whispers that don't belong to the living. Sometimes the night watchmen at Swan Dock claim they hear a boy's laughter coming from the graves, followed by a woman's humming, a lullaby older than any word. At other times, the lotus that grows wild along the Ping blooms black for one night and then disappears by morning. Those who collect the petals say they smell like rain and blood, and when they burn them, they hear soft voices in the smoke, a mother's voice, a child's, calling for each other through the veil that separates the two worlds. Somewhere in Chiang Mai, beneath the roots of the oldest tree in that cemetery, there is said to be a mirror buried in the soil, its glass cracked, its frame bound in river reeds. If you find it and dare to look inside, they say you might glimpse not your own reflection, but a woman's face, eyes hollow, lips trembling, whispering softly, "Have you seen my son?" And if you answer her, if you speak even a single word, your voice will not belong to you anymore. In every ghost story, there is always someone who wants to prove it wrong. In this one, his name was Somchai Virote, a young journalist from Bangkok who came to Chiang Mai with a tape recorder and the arrogance of reason. He had heard the whispers of the mother who spoke with her dead child, of the grave that breathed through the soil, and believed they were only superstition, a convenient madness in a land where grief had no cure. He was 28, tall, skeptical, always smoking, always writing. The year was 1984. The story of Mae Chariya had long faded from the local papers, But there were still old villagers who would not speak her name after sunset. Somchai thought that was exactly why he needed to come. He wanted a headline, "The Woman Who Kissed Death." But what he found was something that did not want to be found. The first night he arrived, he stayed in a small guest house near the old quarter. The owner, a woman in her 60s, warned him gently, "You can write about temples, sir, but not about her. Some names should not be said out loud." He smiled, promised to be careful. She only shook her head and placed a single lotus petal on the windowsill before leaving. When he asked why, she said, "For silence." That night, the wind rattled the bamboo outside, and he dreamt of a child knocking softly at his door. He woke to find his recorder still running, though he had not turned it on. The tape hissed softly, and beneath the static, a voice was humming, a lullaby, faint, trembling, almost like someone breathing through water. The next morning, he went to Wat Suan Dok to meet an elderly monk who had known Mae Chariya, one of the few still alive who remembered her face. The monk, Phra Thepnan, was nearly blind, his skin the color of aged parchment. When Somchai asked about the kiss of the dead, the monk lowered his gaze and murmured, "It is not a kiss, it is a surrender. Those who love the dead too much forget the difference between memory and soul." He told Somchai about an old scroll hidden in the temple's library, one that spoke of the lotus of remembrance, a flower said to bloom only when grief becomes stronger than death itself. The monk warned him not to touch it, for the ink on its pages was mixed with ashes of those who had tried the ritual. Somchai laughed quietly, but his hand trembled when he lit another cigarette. He thanked the monk, left a small donation, and walked toward the cemetery. The path was silent, the air heavy with the smell of wet earth and rain. Even the cicadas seemed to hold their breath. He reached the old cemetery before dusk. The bamboo groves swayed in rhythm, and the ground beneath his feet was soft, too soft, as though the soil itself had been breathing. At the far end, he found the grave, unmarked, half-sunken, with traces of wax melted into the dirt. The lotus symbol carved on the stone was cracked, its petals chipped away by time. He placed his recorder on the ground, pressed the red button, and whispered, "This is Somchai Virot, documenting local folklore of Chiang Mai, the so-called ritual of the kiss of the dead." The air shifted as if something had heard him. He waited, but only silence answered, until the wind began to hum. At first it was faint, like the sigh of reeds along the river. Then came the sound of water dripping, and a woman's voice almost tender, "Where is my son?" Somchai froze. He checked his surroundings. No one. The cemetery was empty, yet the voice grew clearer, closer. He turned toward the recorder. The tape was spinning faster than it should. He picked it up and felt it vibrate, like a living heart. Then came another voice, smaller, a boy's voice whispering beneath hers. "I'm here, Mae." The ground quivered. His breath caught in his throat. He dropped the recorder, stumbled backward. But curiosity, the curse of every journalist, pulled him closer again. He crouched beside the grave, and through the thin layer of mud, he saw something pale, a fragment of a mirror, cracked and glistening. He reached for it. The glass was cold, colder than the rain, and when he lifted it, his reflection was gone. In its place, a woman's face, gray lips, eyes that moved slowly toward him. "Did you call my name?" she whispered. He tried to drop the mirror, but his hands would not obey. Her mouth trembled. Something inside the glass shimmered. Shapes, flickers, a river, a child, a grave. Then without sound, she mouthed the words, "Kiss me," and the wind screamed. Somchai woke up at dawn. The mirror was gone. His recorder lay beside him, still running. The tape was full. He played it back, and what he heard was not his own voice. It was her, Mae Chariya, whispering softly, pleading, "He's cold. My boy is cold." At the end of the tape, a child's laughter echoed, gentle, distant, fading. He left the cemetery before sunrise, his clothes soaked, his shoes covered in mud that smelled like river water. He returned to the guest house, but the owner refused to let him in. "You went there," she said. "You shouldn't have gone there." He begged, showed her the tape. She stared at it, then crossed herself and whispered, "Bury it before it buries you." 3 days later, Somchai boarded the train back to Bangkok. He never published the story, but in his last note, found in his apartment 2 months later, he wrote only this: "I kissed her voice through the machine. Now when I breathe, someone else breathes with me." They found his body slumped over the desk, the recorder still running, and from the tape came the faint sound of water and a child whispering, "May." Today, the locals say his grave lies near the one he once recorded, 2 stones side by side beneath the same frangipani tree. Sometimes during monsoon, the ground there floods, and black lotus flowers float between them. No one dares pick them, because each bloom, they say, carries a whisper from the lips of the dead, a memory too heavy for the living to bear. And if you listen closely to the wind passing through Chiang Mai at night, you may still hear the faint echo of his voice, entwined with hers, retelling the same story over and over, like a confession that cannot end. Long before the monks built their white stupas and golden roofs, the land that would become Chiang Mai was ruled by shadows and prayers older than scripture. The people then believed that memory itself had weight, that grief could sink through the soil and bloom again as a flower. They called it Dak Chub, the lotus that drinks the breath of those who mourn. It was said to grow once every century in the mouth of the first corpse kissed by the living. Its petals were black as midnight. Its heart glowed faintly blue, and whoever touched it would remember not their own life, but the life of the one they loved most. After Somchai's death, a novice from Wat Suandok found an unmarked scroll in the temple library, sealed in oil paper and bound with human hair. The ink was fading, but the script was unmistakably Lana, the tongue of the old northern priests. At the top it read, "Chub Sop, the kiss that breathes." The novice took it to the abbot, and for 3 nights they tried to translate it. Each time they reached the final verse, their candles went out by themselves. On the 4th night, the abbot ordered it buried beneath the altar. But the novice, curious and foolish, copied the lines by moonlight. He vanished before dawn. Only the translation remained. "To bridge the river of sorrow, place the lotus upon the tongue of the dead. Let the living press their lips and breathe. One breath binds the two. 2 breaths open the gate. But the 3rd breath, the 3rd will never return." The story might have ended there, buried under the marble floors of the monastery, if not for a woman named Dr. Lalana Siritong, an anthropologist from Chiang Mai University. She had read Somchai's final notes and believed the ritual to be a metaphor, a poetic relic of the old mother cults of Lana. To her, the kiss was not literal, it was a symbol of emotional rebirth. But as she began her fieldwork, small inconsistencies appeared. The cemetery maps she found from 1937 did not match the land. There were graves that no record listed, and one of them, the same unmarked mound near the frangipani tree, seemed to breathe when she placed her palm upon it. On the 7th night of her research, Dr. Lalana recorded herself reading the translated verse aloud, hoping to catch resonance for her thesis on oral tradition. Instead, the air thickened. The candle beside her hissed. her tape captured a faint sound, the rhythm of two breaths overlapping. When she replayed it, her voice was joined by another, softer, childlike. It repeated her words, syllable by syllable, as though learning to speak again. She did not recognize it, but the villagers who later heard the tape swore it was the same tone Mae Chariya had used after the ritual, the voice that was not her own. Dr. Lalana sent the recording to Bangkok for analysis. The engineer reported something impossible, a secondary waveform, identical to a heartbeat, embedded between each word. At 3 a.m. that night, her apartment caught fire. The reel melted, but the tape did not burn. It merely blackened, and from the plastic coils seeped the smell of lotus. Those who examined the surviving fragments of her notes found sketches of the old script. Among them was a diagram, a human face drawn beside a flower, their stems intertwined. Beneath it, she had written, "The flower is not the offering, it is the mouth." The implication was horrifying. If the chub sop truly worked, then each kiss fed the flower, and through the flower the dead breathed again, borrowing the voice of the living until the last breath was spent. The monks who saw the sketch sealed the notes in an urn and cast it into the Ping River. But a fisherman claimed that weeks later, black lotus petals began drifting downstream, none decayed, none eaten by fish. When he tried to collect one, his nets tore, and the river hissed as though something beneath it sighed. Even now, the elders of Chiang Mai warn that the lotus is still blooming. They say it appears when the moon hangs low and red, just before the rain breaks. Sometimes it opens in the mouths of the newly dead, sometimes in the dreams of those who love them. A legend persists that if you listen at the right moment, you can hear the flower breathing, not like lungs, but like water swelling and collapsing, drawing in memories instead of air. And those who hear it too long begin to lose their own voices. They start to whisper in the tone of a child, asking for warmth, for mother, for light. The monks call this the second kiss. It happens not in the graveyard, but in the mind, when remembrance becomes hunger. The old prayer carved on the temple wall warns, "Do not pray for the voice to answer, pray for silence is mercy." But mercy in Chiang Mai is a fragile thing. Each rainy season, the cemetery floods again, and the petals rise carrying with them faint reflections, faces that shift like smoke upon water. Some say one of them is Mae Chariya, some say the other is Somchai, and between them floats a third, smaller, smiling. No one knows which one is breathing. They say stories are like rivers. You can stand upon their banks and believe you are safe, but once you speak their name aloud, the current knows your voice. By the time I reached Chiang Mai, the rain had not stopped for 7 days. The Ping River was swollen and brown, its surface scattered with flowers that looked black even in daylight. The villagers called them Dak Chub, the morning lotus. They would not touch them, would not even let the petals drift near their boats. I had come to find Dr. Lalana's apartment. The fire had consumed the walls, but the floor was unburned, as though something had been lying there shielding it. Beneath the soot, I found a circle of white ash, perfectly round, and at its center, a single tape recorder. It was still warm. I carried it back to my guest house near the old city gate. When I pressed play, the tape crackled like rain on metal. At first, I heard only Lalana's voice, reading the same verses from the translation. One breath binds the two. Then a second breath joined hers, a long, low exhale that did not match her rhythm. And beneath it, a heartbeat, slow, heavy. Too heavy to belong to a woman, my room's mirror began to fog. The sound grew closer, not through the speaker but through the air itself, as if the walls were breathing with me. I turned the recorder off. The breathing did not stop, That night, I dreamt of the cemetery by the frangipani tree. The earth was open, the rain filling it like a basin. Something moved beneath the water, a shape half human, half flower, its skin covered with thin black petals. It opened its mouth, and inside was not a tongue, but a bud. When I woke, the taste of lotus clung to my throat, bitter, metallic. My window was wet, though the rain had stopped. Someone had traced a single word upon the glass: breathe. By the third day, I began hearing whispers through my microphone. I thought it was interference, the rain, the wind. But the static formed syllables, sometimes Thai, sometimes Lana, sometimes something older, a sound that felt like teeth pressing into air. When slowed down, it became a voice I almost recognized. A man's voice, Somchai's voice, from the recordings of his funeral. He was saying, "The third breath will never return." I tried deleting the file. My laptop froze. The audio replayed itself, this time ending with a single breath that wasn't mine. I realized then that I had already taken the first two. I went to Wat Suan Dok, to the old abbot who had once seen the scroll. He was blind now, but when I spoke, he turned his head sharply. "You have carried it with you," he whispered, "the voice that seeks a mouth." He told me that each telling of the story was a kind of offering. Every listener became a vessel, not by blood, but by memory. "The flower grows in remembrance," he said, "and you have remembered too much." I asked what the third breath meant. He smiled, toothless. "It is when the story remembers you." That night, I set up my recorder one last time. If the voice wanted to finish its ritual, I would let it, but on my terms. I lit 3 candles, placed a lotus petal on the table, and began to narrate everything I had seen, every sound I had heard. I described the smell of wet earth, the rhythm of the tape, the pulse in the floor. As I spoke, the air thinned. Each word felt heavier, as though it were being pulled out of me. My reflection in the window began to darken. The candlelight flickered inside the glass, but not in the room. Then the breathing returned, not around me, but through me. My own chest rose and fell in time with something unseen. It wasn't frightening. It felt familiar, like inhaling a memory I had lost long ago. I reached the final line, but the third breath, the third will never return. And I exhaled. Silence. Then faintly, another exhale followed mine, from somewhere within the recorder. It was not echo. It was answer. The candles bent inward, their flames stretching toward me. The mirror cleared, and for the first time I saw not my reflection, but a face beneath it. Eyes closed, lips blue, a lotus blooming where the mouth should be. The petals moved with every word I had just spoken. They were my words, but not my voice. I understood then. The story did not want an ending. It wanted continuation. And through every listener, every retelling, it breathes again. When I awoke the next morning, the recorder was gone. Only the black petal remained, dry and weightless. I packed my things and left Chiang Mai. But as the train crossed the Ping River, I saw something that turned my stomach cold. The water shimmered with petals, thousands of them, drifting in slow circles. And for a moment, beneath the surface, I saw my own reflection smiling back. It opened its mouth. Inside was another lotus. The wind pressed against the train window, and from the distant speakers of the carriage's old radio, a breath whispered through the static. Not Somchai's, not Lalana's, mine. They say every story ends when the teller runs out of air. But this one still breathes. Perhaps even now as you listen, you are taking the first breath. Be careful. There are 2 left. The villagers say that when a person breathes their last, the body does not forget the shape of air. The ribs remember, the throat remembers, and sometimes the breath finds its way back. I left Chiang Mai that morning, but the road did not let me go. The hills seemed to fold inward, the sky pressed low like wet linen. Every mile took me deeper into silence, and the silence began to sound like a heartbeat. I tried to hum a song, something human, something to keep myself anchored, but my voice came out wrong. It trembled on a second tone, an echo that did not belong to me. Each note bent downward, as though someone were singing through my ribs. By the time I reached Lampung, the air had grown thick and yellow. The market was closing. The vendors' eyes followed me, but their mouths did not move. One old woman selling incense looked at the black petal in my hand. Her lips parted just enough to say, "Do not bury it, it buries you." That night at the Riverside Inn, I dreamt again. Not of graves, but of rooms filled with mirrors. In each mirror stood a version of me, but their eyes were not mine. One held a candle, one held a lotus, one held a boy's hand. When I looked closer, the boy was not breathing, yet his chest rose and fell, in rhythm with mine. Then all the reflections exhaled together, and the mirrors cracked like ice. The pieces fell outward, and in their shattered surface, the boy smiled. He whispered, "Mae Chariya found me." I woke with a start, the taste of metal on my tongue. My pillow was damp, my hands covered in fine gray dust. Ash. The black petal had dissolved, leaving a faint stain in the shape of a mouth. When I tried to wash it away, the mark spread, darkening the sink like ink in water. I did not feel fear anymore, only recognition. I began to remember things that weren't mine. A small house near the temple, a boy's laughter echoing in the yard, the smell of fried garlic and lemongrass at dusk. I could see Mae Chariya's face in the kitchen window, soft, weary, beautiful. She turned to me, smiled, and called out, "Come home before the rain, Somchai." The name hit me like a pulse. It was not just memory, it was occupation. The next day I returned to the cemetery. The ground had dried, but the scent of rot still lingered. The air tasted like rust. I brought with me 3 candles, a piece of white cloth, and my voice, not to summon, but to surrender. As I knelt before the old frangipani, I heard something beneath the soil, a slow, rhythmic tapping, like fingernails against wood. Each tap came in 3s. I placed my palm on the earth, and the vibration moved up my arm like breath. The wind rose, the petals shivered, and the ground opened, not violently, but gently, like a chest releasing air after too long held still. From the darkness below came the scent of lotus and old water, and then a hand, small, wet, reaching upward. I could not move. The fingers brushed mine, and a child's voice spoke inside my head, not aloud. "Tell her I am not gone. Tell her I am still breathing." The soil began to rise again, closing the gap, but the voice did not fade. It entered me, through the hand, through the breath, through the space that had been waiting. I do not know how long I knelt there. The candles had burned down to their roots. The sun had not moved. Time had stopped, or I had left it behind. When I finally stood, the world looked different. The light softer, the air trembling slightly, as if reality itself were uncertain of its own existence. On the path back, I met a monk carrying a basket of white flowers. He bowed without looking up and said, "Sometimes when the living grieve too deeply, the dead find the way back through them." I wanted to ask how to stop it, but the words died on my tongue. He was already gone. Only the scent of lotus remained. That evening, I wrote a letter I would never send. To the woman who kissed death and heard her son's voice. I understand now. It was never about bringing him back. It was about finding a place where grief could breathe. But the air you called has not stopped moving. It moves through me, through every retelling, through every listener who stays until the last breath. I sealed the letter with wax and left it beneath the frangipani tree. The moon was rising, pale, cold, indifferent. The shadows of the branches looked like ribs. I stood there listening, and then I heard it again. A small voice, faint but clear. Mae Chariya. The wind answered with another whisper. This time it was not hers. It was mine. From that night on, I could no longer speak in my own tone. Every word carried two layers. The echo of a child beneath my breath. People began to notice. Strangers turned their heads when I passed. Dogs barked at my shadow. Mirrors showed me exhaling when I was holding still. I have stopped recording, stopped writing, stopped praying. There is nothing left to offer that is not already taken. The story has found its host, and in the dark, as I sleep, I feel the boy breathing through me. He dreams of water, of flowers closing around his face, of his mother whispering his name through the soil. And when he wakes, it is me who opens my eyes. Some nights I stand at the riverbank and wait for sunrise. The mist rolls low over the water, and for a few seconds it looks like the whole world is breathing. I think of Mae Chariya. I think of her voice, soft, cracked, calling for a boy who never answered. And then I hear him, inside my own chest, answering back. Mi oi konjai. The words slip out before I can stop them. Not Thai, not English, but the language of remembering. When the villagers pass, they whisper my name, as though afraid I might hear. Perhaps they know. Perhaps they understand that some stories do not end with the telling. They wait, they breathe, and when someone listens long enough, they move again. The body remembers, the breath remembers, and soon the earth will too. The rain returned the following night. It did not fall. It descended, like fingers pressing against the earth, urging it to open. Chiang Mai streets were empty, the temple bells muted by the storm. Each drop against the roof tiles sounded like the ticking of a clock that had forgotten time. Somewhere beyond the Ping River, a single gong trembled. I knew the sound. I had heard it before, the night I first listened to Lalana's tape. A single tone calling through water, a pulse between worlds. It was the hour of returning, and I understood. The story was not finished until it saw its own reflection. I walked back to the river, following the same road that Mae Chariya once took. The rain veiled everything, trees, houses, even the mountain line, until the world became nothing but movement and breath. The water had risen, black and heavy, its surface trembling with the memory of flowers. Lotus petals drifted like ghosts without stems. I could not tell if they floated on the water or within it. At the bank stood the outline of a woman, thin, still. Her hair clung to her face and she was humming the same melody I had heard in my dream. Mae Chariya, I whispered, but she did not turn. I stepped closer and the air thickened, not cold but dense, as though the world were inhaling. She was not real. Or rather, she was too real. Every raindrop avoided her. Every shadow bowed around her. She spoke without moving her mouth. The voice came from the water. He called me, and I answered. But now he calls through you. I wanted to ask what she meant, but my tongue refused. My breath wasn't mine anymore. Each inhale pulled the air from the water. Each exhale returned it in ripples. "Where's the boy?" I asked. "Where is Somchai?" Her head turned then, slowly, painfully, as if her bones remembered the movement, but her spirit did not. Her eyes, they were full of light, and inside that light, I saw everything. The child's small body beneath the tree, the mother's trembling hands, the forbidden kiss upon cold lips, and the moment the breath traveled from one mouth to another. She had not called back her son. She had called back his breath, and it had wandered, seeking a new body. Mine. She lifted her hand. The water mirrored her motion, forming a circle of ripples that did not fade. In its center, the reflection began to move on its own. A second Mae Chariya, then a boy, then a man, shifting between shapes like smoke, remembering its form. She whispered, "Every grief seeks a vessel. Every vessel seeks a reflection. Tonight, you will give it both." The river began to rise, not flooding but lifting, as though gravity itself had changed its mind. The petals gathered around me, forming a circle, white, red, black, a crown of decay and beauty. The air filled with the scent of wet lotus. It was not sweet. It was heavy, ancient, like the breath of the river itself. I felt the boy's presence then, not outside but within my lungs. He was breathing through me again, but this time he was guiding me. He whispered, "Don't be afraid. You're only remembering." The reflection in the water began to mirror me perfectly. When I stepped forward, it stepped back. When I raised my hand, it reached toward mine. But there was one difference. Its lips were moving. Mine were not. I leaned closer, the rain sliding down my face, the thunder pausing just long enough to let the silence speak. The reflection whispered a single phrase, "The third breath is yours." And then it smiled, a small, innocent smile that broke me open. The water surged upward, embracing me, filling my mouth, my eyes, my ears. I could no longer tell if I was drowning or praying. The cold was not pain, it was memory. I saw the boy's last moments, the shout, the fall, the stone that split the air. I saw the mother's grief, the forbidden kiss, the breath that refused to die. And then I saw myself, kneeling beneath the frangipani, speaking her story into the recorder, becoming the next mouth for the breath to travel through. The ritual had never been about resurrection. It was about continuation. Each telling was a kiss, each listener, a vessel, each breath, rebirth. When I came to, the rain had stopped. The river was calm again, its surface smooth as glass. But something was different. The world was quieter, not empty, but listening. My reflection no longer followed me. It lingered behind, smiling faintly, its lips still moving, though no sound came out. I knew then the story had claimed its reflection, and I was no longer the storyteller. I was the echo. I walked back toward the city in silence. The monks were already ringing the morning bells. Each sound felt like a heartbeat, each echo a breath. In the distance, the old cemetery shimmered beneath the dawn. Mist coiled around the frangipani, and in that pale light, I thought I saw two figures, a woman and a boy, standing hand in hand beside the graves. She turned her head slightly, not toward me, but through me. The wind carried her whisper across the field. "Tell them not to kiss the dead. The dead remember too well." When I reached my guest house, the mirror above the desk had fogged again. Someone had written across it with a trembling finger, "You have told it. Now it will tell you." The letters dripped slowly, forming small puddles on the floor, and from those puddles rose the faint scent of lotus. I wiped the glass. My reflection did not move. It only smiled. Soft, patient, as though waiting for me to breathe again. If you are still listening, It means the story has already found you. And before it leaves, it will take one last breath. Be still. Listen. You may hear it in the spaces between words, the faint rhythm beneath the sound of your own heart. That is not your heartbeat. It is hers. It is his. It is theirs. The villagers speak of a night when the river does not move, when even the frogs fall silent, and the mist gathers like breath waiting to return. They say that on such nights the lotus on the graves bloom at once, not white but black, as though remembering the color of sorrow. It happened once before, the year Mae Chariya vanished. They found her shawl near the frangipani tree, still warm though the rain had turned cold. Next to it, a child's toy car, half buried in the mud, and a trail of footprints that ended at the riverbank. But there was no body, only the reflection of two figures beneath the water, holding hands. When the monks drained the river days later, they found no one, only the petals, hundreds of them, still fresh, still trembling, as if breathing. Years passed. People forgot. The cemetery grew over with weeds. The frangipani withered, and the air grew silent again. But sometimes when the moon rises low and yellow, a voice drifts across the fields, soft, uncertain, childlike. May. The farmers say it is the wind. The old women know better. They close their windows, light incense, and whisper a prayer they no longer understand. Let the breath find peace. Let the mouth close in silence. Let the river remember only water. I am writing this now in a language that does not belong to me. My hands move, but I do not command them. Each word appears before I think it, as if the page itself were remembering what must be written. I no longer dream. I no longer eat. I breathe, only to write. The boy's voice hums inside my ribs, soft, rhythmic, patient. He is not cruel. He is lonely. He does not understand death, only distance. He asked me to tell it again. The story, his story, their story, until someone listens closely enough to become the next breath. So I speak. Once there was a mother who loved her son too deeply to let him go. Once there was a boy who died too soon to understand he was gone. Once there was a kiss that bridged both worlds. A mouth upon a mouth, a prayer against silence. And from that kiss, the breath that should have ended continued. It found others. It found me. And now it finds you. Do not turn away. You can feel it, can't you? The air tightening around your chest, the small tremor in your throat. That is where it begins. Do not speak your name aloud. Do not look into the mirror. Just listen, because the story breathes through the act of listening. Because every time someone hears the words, Mae Chariya, a lotus opens somewhere in the dark. You may smell it soon. Wet soil, iron, the scent of something once alive. And when you do, close your eyes. Do not breathe in. Do not breathe out. Just wait. Let the story finish its breath through you. I remember the first night I told it. The rain, the candlelight, the reflection that smiled without moving. I thought I was preserving a legend. I thought I was safe behind my recorder. But stories are not meant to be preserved. They are meant to feed. And the old ones, the ones born of grief, feed on the living. They do not take flesh, they take voice, because the voice is the bridge between air and soul. And the breath that carries the story is the same breath that carries you. The monks say there is a way to end it, to silence the echo. You must find the place where the breath began, the grave beneath the frangipani, and seal it with your last exhale. Bury your breath where hers was taken. Let the air die there, in the earth. I went once. I stood before that grave. I tried to do it. But when I opened my mouth, the boy's voice came out instead. He was laughing, and the earth laughed with him. So I left it unsealed. Perhaps that is mercy. Perhaps that is curse. Now the breath moves on its own. Through every retelling, through every night someone whispers this story aloud. It moves through you, even now as your chest rises and falls. Listen. There, beneath the silence, a sound faint and soft. It is not the wind. It is not the house settling. It is the breath remembering itself. You can almost hear the voice beneath it, the woman's, the child's, the echo of my own. Together they whisper, we are still breathing. We are still here. We never left. And when you wake tomorrow, you might notice something small. The faint scent of lotus near your window, a drop of water on your mirror, a child's laughter where no child should be. Do not answer it. Do not look. Do not speak. Just remember this. Every story ends with silence, but silence too can breathe.